You're listening to the Iterators of the Imperium.
Hi, I'm MEZ, and I'm here with my co-host Ryan, and you're listening to the Iterators of the Imperium podcast, the podcast in which Ryan is the expert on Warhammer 40K, and I'm the noob trying to learn about the Warhammer universe. So Ryan, what is today's topic?
Oh, MEZ, this is an exciting one. I have been waiting for this since the first episode we recorded.
Oh,
This is the first episode of what is going to be, I think, a 3-part. From the way my planning is going, it's going to be 3 parts of one section of the story.
Yeah.
My plan is the first episode is going to be primarily focused around one character. The second is going to be filling you in on the details of the rest of the major players in this in a bit less detail, and then continuing the main storyline of it. And the third episode is going to be the finale and the aftermath of this.
Okay.
I'm struggling with what to call it because I have a name to use for it, but I'm not sure if I should use it. But we're gonna go for it. So
do it.
We're calling this first episode Horus Rising.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's exciting, and I like this idea of having quotes once in a while for you from the books. And I want to make it clear, I've read the start of this series of the books. It is like 80 books long. We're covering it in 3 episodes. I want to make that clear. There's a lot we're going to miss out here.
Whoa.
And we will fill it in later, but probably in character-specific episodes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're cutting into the bone with information right now, right?
Yeah, exactly, yes. I'm going to...
So we don't have to sit here for like a 15-hour...
Yeah, I'd be better off just reading you the book at that point, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do that. Story times with Ryan and MEZ.
We'll just do that in a stream or something like
Yeah,
that.
that's a good
24-hour
special episodes for the followers. Just us reading a book.
I'm down.
So yeah, I'm going to try and cut this down as much as possible, but these are probably still going to be a little bit longer than our usual episodes, just because we are covering a lot, and I'm just accepting that's a thing that's going to have to happen for this to go over properly.
Yeah.
Because I don't want you to miss out on a lot of this. A lot of people I've heard tell this story, even in big 3-parters and stuff like that, and they always miss a lot of stuff that reading the book I really enjoyed. And while I can't give you the same level of detail because it would just take I would actually have to read you the book, obviously, to give you the same level of detail. But I still want to get the storylines of the minor characters along to you because they are good and they lead up to more down the line. So we're going to try and keep it as reasonable as possible, but also like reasonable in detail and in length. We're going to call this first episode Horus Rising.
Horus Rising.
It is actually the first name of the book in this series, and there's like a trilogy right at the start of it that all follow Horus primarily, and those are the 3 books. That's what we're going to cover in this episode, is essentially the details of those 3 books.
Yeah.
Right? Within this whole storyline, though, the whole 80-book storyline, there are typically thought of as 3 major events in it. I'm not sure if they will end up one to each episode. I'm not sure if they will or not, but we'll see how pacing goes tomorrow for episode 2.
Let's see.
Yeah, but I've been enjoying the idea of having some quotes for these episodes, so I've got one here for you, which I made I had to check a minute ago to be like, wait, is this the right major event for this quote? And I'm right, I made sure.
Okay, what is it?
It is, someone underestimated us. They thought we were, bastard. Sorry, excuse me.
Wait, what?
Someone underestimated. MEZ.
I'm sorry, I just wish that was the quote. Don't edit this out.
That would have been funny.
That would have been funny.
Someone underestimated us. They thought this would be a massacre, but we'll go one better. We'll turn Istvan 3 into a war. You think we can?
Ooh.
We're the Luna Wolves, Garvey. We can do anything. That, I believe, is a quote from a man named Torgadon. Oh, it's his last name.
These names.
The names are great. I would have to check, but I'm relatively certain it's Torgadon that says that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good quote, but I did like your first one, the blooper best. Bastard!
Bastard! Alright, This is going to be a long one, Mez, and we're about to get started, so buckle the fuckle up.
Alright, strap on and strap in. Let's go.
Have you got any more of those? Because I've got one
Nah.
more, but it's wildly inappropriate.
Don't do it right now for the podcast. Later.
There. For Call of Duty. Alright.
Oh, yeah.
So, right, this whole 80 book series that we're talking about, starts off 6 years after the end of the Ulanor Crusade. So in the last episode, we talked about the Ulanor Crusade, which was the massive orc army that Horus threw the leader off of a balcony.
Yep.
And then they had a parade, and Horus was titled as War Master because the Emperor was going back to Terra to work on some secret project. And it caused some animosity among the Primarchs and the Legions. Right. So we're going...
Not everybody was satisfied with
exactly.
With
some people were very angry about it. Some people thought it was like politically bad for them, essentially. But
and some was happy.
Some were happy. Some guys just loved Horus. He was a cool guy. He was a tank. He was good at what he did. He was good at war. He may as well be the master. So 6 years after the events of the Ulanor Crusade and Horus being titled War Master, the Crusade's continuing with Horus now in charge. There is a thing called the Remembrancer Order has been instilled in the fleet. So with the Emperor back on Terra, he's having to answer to like the Council of Terra, which are like the governors of Terra, a lot more because he's right there and they can harass him. So a bunch of stuff ends up getting set up because of him being back there and being able to take a much more political role in what's going on. So one of the things that happens is the Remembrancers get added into the fleet. So Remembrancers essentially are like historians. They are there to document the Crusade. So you've now got a bunch of civilians among the fleets that are just like there for documenting stuff. There is a thing called the Lectitio Divinitatis, which is spreading. It is a holy script, I guess. It's the imperial cult, right? It's a religious belief that the emperor is actually a divine being, which obviously goes against the emperor's beliefs of himself. It goes against the emperor's knowledge of his own existence.
I was about to say, that's a no-go.
Yeah, but there's a lot of civilian, like crewmen and stuff like that, among the ships of the fleet, that this is starting to become a popular belief. And on some of the larger ships, the lower decks have thousands upon thousands of staff members that once in a while will congregate for essentially a like religious meeting to just talk about their love for their emperor. So this is becoming more common. And another detail I want to explain to you is warrior lodges. So some of the legions from like day one basically organize these things called warrior lodges. And essentially it's like a secret society within the legion where the members that are a part of the warrior lodge will meet in secret on their ship. So like if you're traveling somewhere and you've got like 3 days of downtime, you'll probably sneak off in the middle of the night to this crazy meeting like it's an Illuminati thing with a secret message for getting in and all this. But the whole point of it is once you're there, no one holds any rank anymore. So you've got like brand new space marines that have been in it for like a day talking to like captains and stuff that run the fleet as if they're equals, which never happens anywhere else. You would never think of doing that while like on a command deck. You'd get chucked out the airlock for that most places. Yeah. So a lot of the legions, not all of them, have this as like a thing that goes on within the legion, just as a way to breed like brotherhood and stuff like that. But I wanted to mention all of these because they all come up within what we're about to talk about, and it would be weird to try and explain them all as we're going. But Horus is now leading the Crusade, taking over the galaxy in Emperor's stead, and these are the things that are going on within his fleet at the same time. We are going to begin with a planet called 6319. The reason it is designated that is because it is the 19th planet conquered by the 63rd expedition of the Great Crusade. So there's a lot, just random fleets are all titled with a number, and then every planet they come across, because they're all going through separate sections of space and doing this, are all numbered under their fleet, like their expedition number. So 63 is Horus's fleet, and 19 is the 19th planet they've come across. So 6319 is an offshoot of humanity, right? They are one of the lost colonies that just got isolated from humanity in far off space. but
Mm-hmm.
their society has developed in a way that they have gained their own emperor.
Wait, what?
Yeah, they have a guy who is titled as the Emperor of Mankind, but it's just for this planet. Like, just this one planet, because this guy is the best. So it's just like Emperor. Right? But obviously, whenever the Crusade finds a human planet, they will they won't attack. Obviously, they find aliens, they'll attack them right off the bat if they feel like it. But if they find humans, they're just like, all right, let's just go talk to them. Because they're probably on our side. They'll probably be glad to have us join them and help them and get them supplies and stuff. So they sent down. It was a captain of Horus's fleet. At this point they were the Luna Wolves. That was the name at the time. So Luna Wolves send down a captain and a couple of guys, a couple of Space Marines, as like a delegation just to talk to them and see what's going on. At one point, the captain, Hector Varvarus, that was sent down to talk to them, basically decried their emperor because they were like, oh yeah, the emperor, he's a cool guy. And Varvarus was like, wait, I thought you were a lost colony. How do you know the emperor? And they were like, wait a minute. And they realized they were talking about different guys.
Yeah.
So Sejanus was like, no, your guy's a fake emperor. We've got the real emperor. So they killed him for saying that.
What?
They just murdered him for decrying their emperor as not the actual emperor. He's a different guy. Of course he's not the right one. But they disagreed with that logic. They figured the guy that runs their backwater planet clearly is more important and deserving of the title than the guy that runs 90% of the galaxy. But whatever. Yeah. So they this random planet murdered Captain Hector Varvarus just for claiming their emperor was a false emperor. So Horus obviously decided that we're going to war with these guys. Because fuck you for killing my captain, I guess.
Yeah.
So they go to war with these guys, and Horus murders the false emperor pretty easily. He's kind of a wuss, I'm gonna be honest. So that planet falls pretty quick after their emperor is murdered, and their cities are besieged by Space Marines because they just have like normal humans. They don't have anything to fight back properly.
Yeah, and I could imagine like their reality just got flipped around, like so their reality just got turned upside down. It's just like everything I thought was like this is just like everything is wrong.
Yeah, shit's fucked. Yeah. So their planet got changed pretty quick to being part of the Imperium space. When they got onto the ground and they were assaulting the palace so that Horus could murder the Emperor, Gavial and Abaddon had a little competition to see who could get there first, and Gavial won. So yeah, they managed to get to the Emperor's like chambers first. But it was actually a test. They were testing Gavial was part of it. It was like a joking thing, but it was also a test. So Gavial Loken is invited to join what is called the Mournival. And the reason this happens is because Hector Varvarus, the captain that was murdered, was a member of the Mournival. So him dying leaves a gap open. And there was captains that liked Gavial and thought it would be a good point for it. So the Mournival, which by the way was almost the reference for our podcast title, we were going to be the Mournival.
Okay.
Yeah. But the Mournival is essentially a group of advisors for Horus. Right? So it's four of his captains that they just act as a war council. Before he does anything, he talks to them, and they all give him their opinion, so that they can, have a level head, basically, so that everyone feels heard out and stuff like that. And it's just a good idea, basically, because your captains will all get promoted for different purposes. The four members of the Mournival, once he is inducted, are Gavial Loken, Abaddon, the first captain, Horus Axamand, Little Horus, and Tarek Torgadon. The reason Loken is put in it is because he's to be a naysayer. He's basically to stand there and go, that's a fucking stupid idea. Let's not do that, you fucking feral idiot.
Yeah, just so don't have a lot of yes men.
Exactly, yeah. That's why he was invited to join. So 6319 falls after the Emperor is killed, and they start inducting it in Imperial space. But there is one last bastion of, like, rebel holdouts in the mountains. They're called the Whisperhead Mountains. So a bunch of squads are sent in, and they also take a bunch of their remembrancers with them, but like
Mhm.
not to the fight. The idea is once the fight is done, the remembrancers can go in and like document it. While they're assaulting this bastion, a bunch of them keep hearing voices, but they all like think it's the communication system in their suits, the Vox system, malfunctioning. But they keep hearing people or someone talking about Samus. Samus is here. Samus is all around you. Samus is all there ever is. Stuff like that. And it's quite creepy, but they all think it's just like Vox systems effing up and not working correctly. So they all kind of ignore it. So the Marines break the enemy stronghold and they obviously defeat them. And after which, so a section of the squads had went under or into the mountains. Basically, I think they thought there was another way into the fortress, and they were going to try and storm from inside as well.
Mhm.
But a small section went off into the mountains, and after they've broken the stronghold, Gavial Loken is voxed by a guy called Xavier Jubal, who is the leader of the group that went away into the mountains, and he says he sees Samus. So Gavial's like, "What the hell are you talking about? What? It's just nonsense." So he goes to find him. So him and a couple of his Marines go into the mountains and find Jubal in a cave with a bunch of dead Space Marines around him. So Gavial's like, "Oh shit, what did you fight in here? What the hell happened?" And then Jubal turns around and guns down the guy, like the Space Marines that are following Loken. Which is the first ever time a Space Marine has killed a Space Marine, by the way. Pretty big deal.
That's a big deal.
Yeah! But he just turned around and blasted them both dead right then and there. So, obviously, Gavial Loken and Xavier Jubal just start fighting, because Jubal's clearly lost his fucking mind.
Mm-hmm.
And Loken manages to kill him. He manages to defeat him. And as he's like preparing himself to like report what the fuck just happened and try to like get his head straight, Jubal just comes back to life.
What?
Yeah. His corpse just like rises from the ground, but it like warps into like a twisted monster and then like charges him down. Unfortunately, a side part to what was going on here is a bunch of the remembrancers were like, we can't be bothered standing at the landing pad waiting for things to happen. So we're going to go for a walk into the mountains and accidentally end up in this cave as well. So one of them gets charged by the big monster that was Jubal, and she takes a photo of it because she had her camera up in preparation, and then this thing charged her. So she takes a photo of it, and then at the last minute, Loken saves her by ending the creature's life pretty heavily.
Yeah.
So after it, obviously, that remembrancer is fucked mentally. Gavial Loken is like, what the hell just happened? Because he can't even begin to fathom what that was, that monstrosity. So Horus comes to see him personally and explains that there are... So everyone knows about the warp, right? They know the warp exists. They know it's kind of shady magic. And they know that some psychers are overtaken by the warp. Like, it does something to their mind. And they go kind of feral. And they can do some things that they have no business being able to do because they're in this, like, crazy mind state. And the warp is just taking advantage of their body as a conduit. Horus disguises what happened by explaining that that area, that cave, has some, like, weird resonance with a warp. And that's an area where, like, the wall between the two is very thin. And even someone that isn't a psyker, like Xavier Jubal was not, he was just a Space Marine, can be affected by the warp in the same way because of that, like, that kind of, that lacking of the gap between the two in that one area. And that's what happened. He was warp touched, basically.
But isn't that just a bad excuse?
Yeah, it was terrible. And Loken was like, oh, okay, and tried to convince himself to believe it, but he didn't. Like, he knew what he saw, and what he saw was not the same as a psyker that's gone rogue.
Yeah.
You know, he's seen that before. It's not the same goddamn thing. He also goes to see the Remembrancer a bunch of times to try and check on her, but mentally she is destroyed. Like, her cabin that she lives in on the ship just is like she's been locked in like a hermit, and she's just having like one night stands with random like military soldiers and stuff,
Wait,
and
what?
drinking and taking drugs and stuff. She is just totally off the rails because of what she saw, and her mind just cannot process it at all. So she's trying to forget about it any way she can.
Yeah, just trying to keep busy and not be
Aye.
left alone with her thoughts.
Exactly, yeah. So she's feeling it as well. She also can't figure out what the hell's going on with that one. But that was the end of the whole 6319 thing. That planet was now essentially ready to be brought under compliance. So the Imperium was just rebuilding it. So the fleet moves on. En route to their next place, First Chaplain Erebus accompanies the 63rd expedition. Lorgar sent him from his fleet because he's a chaplain of the Word Bearers, Lorgar's fleet, on like political purposes. Basically, it makes it seem like he's trying to keep Horus on the good side by having Erebus stand next to him and talk about how great he is for a while. So Horus essentially takes him on as an advisor during his time with the fleet, and takes his opinion quite severely, quite as if he respects his opinion quite a lot, basically. The 63rd expedition is sent to help Emperor's children on a planet called Murder. So
That's a lovely name.
They get like a distress beacon thing from this middle of nowhere planet, and when they go to it, there's like these beacons all around the planet, like satellites, that are like signaling this really weird musical code, and none of them can figure out what the hell it means, and they're just like, well, there's a bunch of dead Emperor's children down there, so we should probably do something about that. Because when they got there was an Emperor's Children ship there, like one of the fleet ships, and they essentially found out from like the last living members of the fleet that the guy in charge had refused to wait for reinforcements from Blood Angels. Because they had asked for reinforcement of Blood Angels, but the Blood Angels were just really far away, so it was going to take a while. So he sent down a bunch of guys, and then got no response from them. Because there's a storm on the planet, just all the time. So they figured it was the storm was blocking communication. So they just sent down a few more guys, and they couldn't hear from them else. They sent down a few more guys. Unfortunately, they were all being murdered by the planet's inhabitants. So instead of sending all of his guys down in force, he just drip-fed them into a blender, basically. Because he's a moron.
Idiots.
Yeah, but obviously they didn't know what was going on, but that guy's still an idiot. So,
yeah.
So a couple of Horus's squads get sent down to see what the hell's going on, and they find a bunch of Emperor's children, and they manage to kind of survive together a bit. But there's an alien race on the planet called the Megarachnids.
Okay.
Because they're essentially big spidery monsters, right?
Ugh.
But their like front legs are like used as weapons because they're like bone legs made like they're blades. It's weird, right? Their front mandible limbs are like bladed. Horus's guys manage to meet up with Emperor's children, and they find a bunch of dead Blood Angels. Because I'm sure the Emperor's children originally went there because of a Blood Angel's distress beacon from like a small squad. But they find them all impaled on these big spiky like stone trees, basically. It's a whole horrible situation. There's a reason the planet is called Murder, and it's because that's what it does to you. So the war on Murder lasts for a real long time. It goes on for months, just with them trying to survive, basically. And then eventually the Blood Angel reinforcements turn up, led by Sanguinius, and they just rocket down to the planet and just start kicking ass. Because obviously a Megarachnid is not going to kill Sanguinius. So they just start taking names and kicking ass. And then after a few months of this going on, or after this goes on, a weird a weird alien spaceship turns up in the area, playing like the same weird musical code as all the satellites around the planet were.
Yeah.
And when they contact them, or when they manage to make contact, it turns out they're like a lost section of humanity called the Iterators, and they already fought the Megarachnids and like defeated them, but they didn't want to like genocide the entire race because that's kind of shitty. So they just put them all on this one planet and then put the beacons around it to warn everyone that it's a penal colony for this one race.
Oh god, no.
But just no one understood the weird musical code. You're like,
For God's sakes, man.
I know, it's fucking spectacular. So Horus attempts to like make peaceful communication with the Interex because they are just a lost part of humanity. So obviously you want to bring them into the fold under the Emperor.
Yeah.
So the Interex invite Horus and his people to their home world as a sign of good faith. But they kind of keep them at arm's length a little bit. Like, they seem like they're not telling them everything, which makes, like, Loken and, I believe, Abaddon kind of suspicious. But, like, Horus is like, nah, come on. They're probably just, wary of us because we're all superhuman nut jobs, right?
Yeah.
Like, Horus is, like, fully leaning into, we want these guys on our side. He doesn't want to just murder humans, It's his first time in this position as War Master that the enemy hasn't, or the lost tribe of humans hasn't started the fight for them. So he's like, I want this one to go well, basically. They go to the planet, and they send down like a delegation to the planet. So Horus goes, his captains, I believe it's the Marnival, go with a few of their soldiers, not like full squads, just like kind of a small contingent. And Erebus goes as well, of the Word Bearers, the first javelin. So they go, and they're like being shown around the planet, and they're being told about their culture and stuff. So while they're showing them around, they learn that the Interex are a human race that have been like living with aliens, like side by side. So they've incorporated some alien customs into their society, which obviously the Space Marines are like, well, that sounds a bit heretical, but okay. You seem like nice guys, we'll let it pass for now until we see something too heretical, and then we'll murder you. But like one of the things they show them is this big like hall of relics. And it's like relics from alien races that they've, been involved with or that they've fought, stuff like that. And they one of them comes across like a sword in the place called the Anatheme, which is a really weird looking sword. But they're told that it's a weapon made by a race called the Kinnebrak, which no one knows how the hell these guys make the stuff they make, right? Because the way the sword works is, if the wielder of the sword says someone's name, the sword is instantly fatal to them. It like transforms to be fatal to that individual person, right? Yeah. So if you've got a Space Marine that is allergic to peanuts and you're like, that guy, the sword will kill them like with that, basically. It finds exactly the right way to kill a person. So as soon as you stab them, they just die. Like, they're gonna die. There's no way around it.
That's cool.
Right? That's but no one knows how the hell they make stuff that does shit like that, because that doesn't even make sense.
No, but that's cool.
Like, it's very cool. There's a bunch of other relics in there, but that was the one I found the coolest, so I remembered it.
Yeah.
So they then end up, they get invited to like a proper meeting for like political purposes. I believe it's also like a feast. Horus and the other captains stuff go, but Loken agrees to be the one on guard, basically. So he's like patrolling the perimeter with a few with the normal Space Marines they brought with them, just to make sure nothing goes down, basically. But also all the Interex have guards the same way, scattered around the place, stuff like that. And there's like a guard captain, or like a higher up in the guards, that's been with them the whole time they're going around this place, that Gavial Loken runs into while he's patrolling. And they start chatting, right? And through the conversation, Gavial's like, he realizes the guy's warming up to him a bit, which is good. And then the guy explains that the reason they kept them at arm's length, the reason they've been kind of distant with them, is that they suspected that they might be corrupted by chaos.
Oh.
Right? And Loken is really confused. Because he's like, what the hell are you talking about? What the hell's chaos? And after like 10 minutes of discussion about this, the Interex like guard captain realizes that the humans don't even know what chaos is, even though they use the warp to travel across the galaxy and everything like that. So he's like bewildered. He's like, how in the hell do you not know about chaos? Like,
do I have a story for you?
Aye, but like right as he's about to explain it, he gets like a call. He gets like a communication thing. So he's like, oh, give me a second. And he takes the call, and then he immediately is like, huh, you almost had me there. And then they just try to kill all the Space Marines. And he's like, Loken's just like, what the hell is going on? He's like, no, we knew you were one of them. And they just start attacking them.
What?
So Horus and all his dudes, like, they all just escape, basically. Very confused as to why they were attacked.
What the
Yeah.
actual?
Yeah, they have no idea why they were attacked, why they turned on them, or what they were told. But
What was that call?
exactly, yeah, they have no idea what is going on. So they all just escape, and it kind of comes to nothing with Interrex after that, which is pretty good, actually, to be honest with you, because it could only get worse. Shortly after this, or around that time, after they go back to the fleet, Erebus leaves, because he has his actual job to do. And then shortly after, Erebus sends like a message for Horus, explaining that he needs to come to a planet called Davin. Now, Davin is one of the planets that the 63rd Expedition already took over for the Imperium in the past. Right? Yeah. So they've done this already. Why the hell would they have to go back there? So they do go back because Erebus has called them and made it sound very urgent. So Horus does go back, and he goes to Davin and he finds Erebus, and he's like, right, what the hell am I here for? And Erebus explains that the guy they left in charge of Davin went to one of Davin's moons because there was like a rebel uprising there. And once there, he basically declared he was against the Emperor and started attacking Imperial citizens and stuff like that. So the governor of this place has just turned against them. And he's on the moon of this planet called Davin.
Yeah.
So Horus is like, well, fuck that guy, let's go get him. So Horus immediately, because he's enraged by that, sends all his guys to Davin's moon to be like, let's go fuck him up. And when they get there, the moon is like a rotting marshland, which is not what it's supposed to be. Right?
A rotting marshland? Yeah?
Yeah, it's like a swamp. It was not a swamp the last time they were here, by the way. So they're very confused. Something weird is going on. They eventually, after traveling for a while through like the fog in the swamp, come across the flagship that the governor brought, but it's like crashed and damaged. And also there's a lot of dead crewmen and like the normal military, the Astro Militarum. There's a lot of their guys just lying dead in the swamp as well as like crewmen and stuff. And they're like, well, that's weird, but they crashed, so something attacked them, obviously. Right? But obviously, this is weird because they thought this guy turned evil. But it seems like he's probably just dead at this point. They're like, well, that's a strange thing to be told. As they're like progressing towards the flagship, because they assume that's where the governor will be if he's alive, because there's nothing else in the swamp, all the corpses of the Astro Militarum troops and the crewmen and stuff come back to life and start attacking the Space Marines as like shambling zombies.
What?
Yeah.
What is with like dead people coming back to life?
It's just a thing, man. It happens a lot in 40k. It's usually bad. So a bunch of them have to just keep fighting zombies in the swamp, basically. So what Horus does is he takes Abaddon and Horus Axeman, so his first captain and one of the other captains within the Mournival, to assault the ship along with their squads. And he leaves the other two members of the Mournival to essentially keep fighting the undead and keep the swamp clear and stuff for when they're leaving, because otherwise their landing ship will get overrun and all that crap as well. So Horus, Axeman, and Abaddon all go to assault the flagship, and they split up between different levels of the ship. Horus goes straight for the command bridge, thinking that's where he'll find the governor, and he wants to be the one to find him. But because shit's already going down, he didn't want to leave the chance of being attacked from like a group that got together somewhere else in the ship and then came up behind them. He didn't want to risk that. So he was like, you guys sweep the ship, I'll go find this dude. So he gets to the command ship and he finds the governor. His name's Temba. I think it's Yugen Temba or something like that. Alive, but he's like this big, fat, bloated monstrosity just sitting in like the command chair, fucking giggling to himself like a freak. So obviously Horus starts like trying to talk to him, but also he's so disgusted by him he wants to kill him. So they just start fighting basically. And unfortunately Temba manages to stab Horus in the shoulder with his sword. Right?
With
What the sword Temba is holding when he's a big bloated monstrosity. He manages to stab Horus in the shoulder with it during the fight. But
I mean, that actually sounds odd to me because, like, I just have in my mind that Horus is just like a war god. Like,
he is.
nothing can touch him.
That's basically it, yeah. Just because this guy's so big and fat and nonsense, he just, amongst their fight, he manages to get a hit on Horus and manages to stab him.
All right,
For
game.
the record, Space Marines heal crazy fast. Primarchs heal like Wolverine. Like, they are impossible to kill by poison or disease. Like, they're immune to poison and disease. And a wound will just heal itself real quick.
Must be nice.
Yeah, exactly. But he gets stabbed in the shoulder, and then Horus fucking murders him. I'm pretty sure he like tears his guts out partially. Yeah. And while Temba is dying, he admits that he gave into chaos. Horus doesn't quite know what that means exactly. He's kind of confused by that concept. But then you get the whole thing of Abaddon and Aximand they go to the bridge to find Horus, and they find him basically lying there, bleeding to death, just from this wound in his shoulder that will not heal. So they carry him back to the ship. Horus is now effectively dying. Like, they don't know why. They don't know why he's not healing. Like, any one of them would have healed that wound in no time. So they're like, why the hell isn't Horus healing this wound? Because he's a goddamn Primarch. This is like a paper cut to this dude. But he's just bleeding out, and they don't know what's going on. So they get really scared, and they start panicking. So when they get back onto the flagship, a bunch of civilians are gathered waiting for them to come back, because they just want to see Horus, because he's a really cool guy. And they've heard that he's been injured. So they're like, oh, he's coming back alive. That's great. But they're crowding the landing dock in so much numbers that when the Space Marines try to get Horus off of the ship, they like charge through a bunch of civilians and crush a bunch of people to death.
Oh.
Yeah. Which, by the way, is the first time a Space Marine has ever killed a human.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal, because at this point, Space Marines are like the defenders of the galaxy. They are the Emperor's angels sent to protect humanity, and they just murdered a shitload of humans because they're panicked. So it's a bad thing to have happen, I'm going to be honest. They get Horus to like the medical bay, and the medics, like the apothecaries, or the Space Marine medics, cannot figure out what the hell is going on. They barely know how a Primarch's body works in the first place. So that even if they knew what was killing him, they probably wouldn't be able to do anything about it, because they don't know like what the hell anything inside him is, basically. But also they just don't know why they can't figure out why his body isn't healing him from what has happened to him. So they're trying to keep him alive, desperately. And the apothecaries are like, we need to know what did this to him to have any chance of finding out how to fix it. So Gavio Loken and Tarek Torgadon, the two captains, go back to Davin's moon to search for the weapon. While they're gone, Horus has a whole like fever dream thing where he talks to his remembrancer, but he like tells her way too much. Like, way too much. Like, stuff that humans aren't supposed to know about like the Emperor and shit like that.
Yeah.
So, that's bad, but he's like dying, so, you know, give him that one, I guess. And obviously, the Aximand and Abaddon are really worried about Horus, and they don't know what to do. They're panicked. Erebus turns up and is like, look, it's kind of a long shot, but I've heard about something that might help. On Davin, like the main planet, not the moon, there is a thing called the Serpent Lodge, which are like ritualistic healers. Yeah. And they do this big healing ritual, and apparently it can fix anything, be it like esoteric or mortal wounds. So it can be like a spiritual thing as well. They can fix anything with this crazy ritual, according to the people there. And like, Erebus has been hanging around on that planet for a while now, while he's waiting for Horus to turn up and go kick Temba's ass. So, like, yeah, he's heard about some stuff. So they're so in their panic, they agree to this, and they take Horus to the Serpent Lodge on Davin. So they take him to the lodge. Erebus explains what's going to happen, and essentially they close the doors to the temple with all of the Legion outside protecting the temple. No one's allowed to be inside other than the people doing the ritual and the guy they're doing it to, and Erebus for some reason. They close the doors to the temple, and it's like 3 days before they're able to open it, basically. Like, they physically cannot be opened until the ritual is done. So at the same time, Gavio Loken and Tarek Torgadon are back on the moon looking for the weapon. And
Mm-hmm.
they get to the flagship, and then they get to the command center, the command bridge, where the fight took place. And they find behind the throne, or not throne, the command chair, I guess, that Temba was sitting in, this like ornate wooden box. And inside it is this really weird looking sword, which they both immediately recognize as the anatheme. You know, the weapon the Iterators had.
Yeah.
That kills whoever, like, the wielder names.
Ah, that makes more sense now.
Yeah. So they take it back and give it to the apothecary and be like, can you study this and see if you can figure out how to stop it from killing Horus, please?
Yeah.
No one knows how it works, but, like, you've got about 2 days to figure it out before he dies, I guess. Good luck, Doc. So they take that and try to figure out what's going on. And Loken, looking back on what has happened, realizes that Erebus cannot be trusted. He was the one that led them to Davin, and purely for the purpose of putting Horus on the moon so that he could be injured. And every one of the Luna Wolves was with Horus, or was Loken, who was on guard at the time, when the Iterators suddenly turned on them. But Erebus was unaccounted for. So he realizes that the reason they were attacked is because the anatheme was stolen from their Hall of Relics by Erebus. So they immediately go, where the hell is Horus now? And they find out that Erebus told them to take him to the Serpent Lodge. So they're like, fuck that, let's get down there. That is not happening. There is no way that is a good idea. And they get down there and find out he's been locked in this fucking temple for 3 days or something like that. And they go absolutely apeshit at the other two captains, Axamand and Abaddon, for doing it. And, like, they get that they were panicked, but they did not think it through, right?
No.
There was more they did not know about, and they made the decision too rashly. So it becomes a very divisive issue between the set of them. Now we get to Horus and his crazy death dreams. So the ritual that will take place is to fix Horus, obviously, but it also lets them, like, guide him through seeing a bunch of visions. So the people that are, like, the ritualists from the lodge, they perform an extra part before they start with Horus, which is to put Erebus into his dreams so that he can act as, like, a guide. But they also do, like, they cover his face in blood, but the idea is it allows you to, like, appear as someone else within the dream.
Okay.
So inside the dream, Horus awakens in, like, a big grassy field of, like, a perfect lush green planet, and sky's blue and no one's being murdered by aliens. It's great. It's everything you've ever wanted in 40k. And he's just like, well, this is weird. Am I dead? Am I dying at least? It's one of them. I know it's one of them.
Paradise?
Yeah, like, what's happening here? It's like, something's not right. This is too easy. No one's tried to murder me in 3 minutes. And then while he's, like, just walking, he starts hearing wolves howling just in the distance, and he's like, well, that's weird. And then he spots a guy floating face down in a river.
What?
So he just goes over and, like, drags him out. He basically picks him up by the scruff of the neck and drags him out the river. And it is Captain Hector Varvarus, the captain that was murdered right at the start by the false emperor. And Sejanus explains that where they are is a realm, basically, like, somewhere between reality and the warp, where, like, time isn't exactly what it should be and stuff like that.
Yeah, and his soul might be trapped there or something?
Essentially, yes. It's that kind of thing. That's where he is. He's in a state of, like, limbo because of his, like, dying at the moment. So Sejanus keeps like, trying to guide him on his journey, basically, and talking to him about, like, the great beings of the warp and how they're powerful, but they're not good or evil. They just are. They just exist. And all this kind of stuff. And Horus is taken through a bunch of different visions. And it's stuff like, he sees visions of possible futures. So he sees the galaxy in flames. He sees Space Marines fighting Space Marines. He ends up at one vision that it's like a bunch of poor people, like proper poor people that are, like, haggard and their clothes are destroyed and everything, worshipping at the foot of a giant statue of the Emperor and a handful of the Primarchs.
Oh.
So he sees the Emperor being worshipped as a god. And Sejanus is like, this is what the Emperor wants. The Emperor wants to be worshipped as a god, and this is what he plans to do.
Oh.
Yeah. So Horus eventually just wanders off on his own and starts exploring. He eventually just can't be bothered with Sejanus and just walks away. Which is very funny. And then it gets to a point that he's been hearing the wolves howling in the distance through all of the visions, but they've been getting closer each time. Eventually, he just decides he's going to face the wolves. He wants to know what's happening. And when he does, one of them only has one eye, and it has the sigil of the Aquila, which is the two-headed eagle, which is like the Imperial logo, on its fur. And when he finally turns to face it, and is like, right, what the hell are you doing? What do you want? Stop howling at me. It forms into Magnus the Red.
Oh, what?
Yeah. So there's a little two-page section of the book that's like Magnus preparing a crazy ritual and then like astral projecting himself across the galaxy to this temple. And like the people doing the ritual are like, there is a ghost here, but he is far away and his powers are weak because of this and stuff like that. So Magnus manages to like put himself into Horus's dream. And while he's there, he's like, you're being manipulated. I get it that you're almost dying, but like what he is showing you is total horseshit. Like this man that's guiding you is just straight up lying to you. He's not even himself. And Horus is like, what do you mean? And Magnus just like wipes off the illusion of making him Hector Sejanus. And then Horus can just see that it's Erebus that's been lying to him this whole time. And Magnus is like expecting Horus to be like, you dickhead, and just hate Erebus now and like realize what he's seen as nonsense. But Horus actually realizes and kind of says to the two of them, he's like, I'm not an idiot. I know everything I've seen is splintered nonsense. It means nothing without context. I know that, and I'm going to make up my own mind. Skip forward to a couple of days, or like a day or so later, when Horus awakens fully healed and leaves the Serpent Lodge and just goes back to being in charge perfectly fine. You know, nothing weird about that, nothing suspicious.
No.
No, not at all. The crusade continues. Going forward, Horus takes the opinion of the Mournival less and less. He stops convening the Mournival properly and just starts having Abaddon and Axaman kind of around him more. And he also always has Erebus at his side and takes his opinion on a lot of stuff. We continue on with the Crusades. The 63rd expedition goes on and eventually meets a culture called the Eurasian Technocracy. Do you know what technocracy is?
No idea.
It's a culture that is like all about technology. Like a theocracy is a culture that's all about religion, stuff like that. So they're all about technology. And they organize to have like a meeting on Horus's ship. So the Eurasians will bring like a delegate of like a high-ranking member or the leader or something, and a bunch of their guards and political figures and stuff onto Horus's flagship, and they will meet there and they will discuss and just kind of see if they're on the same page. Because they are human. They are humans. They just are called the Eurasian Technocracy. So these guys all come on board, and the space, like Horus's guys, are bewildered because the people that walk out of the ship, the first couple are like humans, just normal humans. The rest of them are all in full power armor, like all the Space Marines.
Yeah.
But this is a lost chapter of humanity. They can't have Space Marines. So all the Horus's Legion are like, the hell's going on here? What's this? Care to explain, good sir? And while they're talking, the leader of the Eurasians is just like, oh, well, yeah, like, I can tell the power armor's weirding you out. You know, those STCs, they can do some incredible things. And Horus is like, hold up a minute. You have an STC and it works? Do you remember what the STCs were?
Oh, I can't remember.
The AI fabricators that can make anything, basically.
Oh, yeah. Like in the Subnautica.
Yes,
we talked about.
They have a fully functioning one of them on their planet and are bewildered that the rest of humanity doesn't have theirs anymore. So Horus is like, hold on, you have an STC and it works? And they're like, oh yeah, you don't? And then randomly, during the rest of the conversation, Horus just blasts a hole through one of them and just screams that they were trying to assassinate him. And then they just gun down all the delegate from their regions. But like when he explains it, like Gavial Loken and that are like, that didn't happen. No one tried to assassinate you. Like, that definitely. So they just murdered them. That's all it was. Horus just murdered these guys.
Good?
Yeah.
Are you good, bro?
Like, Horus just straight up murdered these guys. Horus ends up with an adept from the Adeptus Mechanicus, the cult of Mars, he ends up contacting him and basically trades him the STCs from this planet for the Mechanicum support in his future plans.
Yeah.
You know, STCs are spoken for, but they now need to attack the Eurasian's planet to get them. They need to actually wipe the planet out to get the STC to give to the Mechanicum. Before we get to that, the warrior lodges that I talked about, so Captain Torgaden is a member of it, and the lodge calls him to a meeting. So he goes, and the like higher or not high-ranking members, because the whole point is they don't have rank in there, but like some people are respected in lodge terms more, just because they're like founding members or they're just much more long-standing members and stuff. But a couple of those guys tried to get Torgaden to agree to essentially sacrifice Gavial Loken to the leader of the Astro Militarum, because there's a guy called Hector Varvarus who is the leader of like the normal human army, right? And the whole thing of the Space Marines crushing humans to death while trying to save Horus has become a big deal, and basically all of humanity is pissed about it now. Because they saw the Space Marines as like these angelic protectors, and suddenly they're just murdering people in cold blood because they don't see them as a human. They don't see them as a person. All they saw was try to save Horus. So this guy, Hector Varvarus, because his rank is so high, because he runs the Astro Militarum, for this area at least, for this section, he's standing as like the one in charge of it. He's being at the forefront of it, because his rank allows him the ability to actually argue with like leaders of Space Marines and stuff about it, and high-level politicians and stuff. So he's like championing the whole thing. This guy is calling for essentially retribution for what happened. Someone needs to answer for these crimes. And the Warrior Lodge tries to get Captain Torgaden to give over Gavial Loken, because they just don't like him very much, basically. They think he's shady or something. And Torgaden just goes, fuck you guys, I am not handing him over, he did nothing wrong. He was like the only one that wasn't part of that. Fuck you. Turn over Abaddon or Axaman, they're the ones that murdered people. Like, or better yet, you guys answer for it. You're also Space Marines, you assholes. So Torgaden's just like, nope, not a chance, I'm not going with your bullshit. So we're going to move forward a little bit from there. That's just a little like in-between war stuff that goes on. So they now have to go to war with the Eurasian's homeworld, and to do that, they have the World Eaters of Angron come and join them for the war. So Angron turns up with his World Eaters, and they go to war on this planet. And while attacking like a main base, basically like a main fortress, they like they have to go uphill to get to it. It's like built at the top of a hill, so they're fighting their way up the hill, and their Space Marines are taking casualties because they're fighting with low ground against a fortress. So it's the whole thing. And they eventually get to a point that they think they've broke them, so they try to advance to the fortress walls and like into the fortress, and accidentally set off like trip mines that are at the top of the hill, and it like buries Angron in rubble and stuff like that. And then he just busts out screaming like a psychopath. It's very funny. But there's a whole lot of like collateral damage because of this. And Hector Varvarus, the Astro Militarum leader, is killed in this process. So problem solved, luckily. No one needs to be sacrificed. That's great. And then they eventually take the main fortress and stuff like that. So that war was pretty easily handled. At this point, Gavial Loken decides to kind of look into stuff that's going on, because he's really suspicious of stuff that's going on after finding out about the anatheme being the thing that caused the issue with Intrex and almost killed Horus. So he's like very suspicious. So he's looking into loads of stuff. And he finds out that Hector Varvarus was not killed by enemy gunfire. He was killed by a Space Marine's bolter round to the back. So he was killed by one of the Space Marines intentionally, so that he would stop like being the champion for the We Hate Space Marines group. So that's not good. And then shortly after this, Horus announces to his follower, to the people he knows he's got on side, his plan, which is why he was trying to recruit the Mechanicum and stuff like that. Which his plan is that he's going to overthrow the Emperor.
Good luck.
Yeah. But unfortunately, the whole thing with the warrior lodges and the religion, a lot of the reason these are becoming popular the way they are is because people like the Space Marines and the Legion stuff aren't very happy with the way they're doing things. One of the really divisive issues is that the Space Marines are obviously traveling through the galaxy, fighting to take over worlds or incorporating lost planets into the Imperium, right? They do all the work, and then some random pompous human arsehole is put in charge of the planet. So they never get a reward for all their work. It's just, they do all the hard work, and then a random human gets to be governor. So that's a really big issue, and a lot of the Space Marines are very unhappy with that. A lot more are unhappy that the Emperor abandoned them to go back to Terra and work on secret nonsense. Stuff like that. A lot of the legions are very unhappy just with the political state of things. Some of them are just unhappy with the Emperor as a concept. So Horus actually has people on his side with this. It's not just him that thinks he can do this. After the deal with the Mechanicum, giving them the STC, he now has all the Reguluses, followers of the Mechanicum, on his side as well. So he's actually amassing a little army here to go fight the Emperor. So yeah, Horus enlists a bunch of other Primarchs to his side. So he manages to get Fulgrim on side. He's got Angron on side, because Angron's a nut job. And he gets Mortarion of the Death Guard on side as well. Horus has their legions join up with him, with his expedition, because there is a rebellion on a planet called Istavan 3. And it's such a large rebellion, apparently, that they need all 4 legions to take them down. So the assault begins. You've got Emperor's Children and Death Guard assault an enemy station, an enemy fortress kind of thing, and it's led by what is called a war singer. There's some kind of psyker that use singing and harmonics to produce their magical effects, but it's essentially a sonic blast that they use through singing. So they end up finding one of these is running the place and having to fight her. Which is a problem, because they're quite hard to kill, because their sound nonsense can destroy bullets and stuff like that, and you can't get near them. So you've got a bunch of captains and stuff that end up fighting them. Eidolon, the captain that was with them on Murder, ends up fighting her. And you've got a guy called Nathaniel Garrow, who I believe, he has a really weird title, sorry. It's Fleet Commander or something like that he has. But you've got Nathaniel Garrow, Captain Eidolon, and Saul Tarvitz. They're a different legion. They're not Horus's guys. They're Emperor's Children, I believe, and Death Guard, respectively. End up in this place fighting her. And while charging her, she does this big blast thing. And Saul Tarvitz and Nathaniel Garrow are sent careening down this hill that they're on. And Garrow almost falls off the cliff, and Saul saves him. And it turns out those two have been friends for a long time, even though they're in different legions. They've just happened to fight alongside each other a lot. So they've gained this brotherhood, and they love each other like they're brothers, which is very rare among legions, and very rare between people from different legions as well. Usually your only camaraderie is with your own legion. And while he's saving Garrow, who by the way loses a leg in this process, Eidolon kills the war singer. It is funny, because in the book, right, there is actually an explanation for this, and we will get to it. In the book, it keeps talking about this woman's singing and the big crazy harmonics of it, causing this big weird disruption field. And then Eidolon just shouts back at her really loud, and it fucks up the sonic field, and then he just murders her. You're yeah, she's only singing. If you just sing back in the wrong frequency, it'll probably just make it sound shit and not work. So I thought that's what it was. I thought he was just really bad at singing and tried to join in, and it just turned off her magic. Turns out that's not what happened, but we'll get to that later. But he basically shouted at her and then murdered her. But the important part of that is Saul Tarvitz and Nathaniel Garrow are best of friends, and Garrow is injured. Right, that's some middle ground shit. Back to the war. So Horus announces the squads that are going to be used to fight on Istavan 3, and they are like not normal squads, because usually like the first captain has his guys, and then they'll get sent in, or you might send like third company and fifth company, and then 18th company. But no, he's got like squads made up of like one random sergeant and then like 7 or 8 guys or whatever, just guys that he's never met before from different companies from all 4 legions. So it's just hand-picked random troops for each squad that make no sense, basically. But that's what's happening. You just gotta deal with it. You gotta go. When they find out about this, a lot of the captains are like, well, that's fucking weird. But it's set up that like these guys will all get sent in, and then after a certain point, reinforcements of the rest of them will be sent in. So only certain leaders are getting sent in as well at this point, along with only the very specific troops. So a lot of the captains and stuff find this really weird. Saul Tarvitz is one that is very suspicious of it, and he's meant to be going to the planet. He was meant to be one of the captains leading it. But unfortunately, another member of their group died, and he basically manages to take on that man's responsibility, which is one no one wants, to keep him out of the battlefield. So he manages to stay on his ship rather than get sent down, so that he can do some investigating, because none of it sounded very reasonable. And while he's investigating, he goes into like the gunnery deck of the ship and sees them loading these like weird, they look like glass orbs into the cannons, but they're full of this like weird liquid. And he realizes that he does know what it is.
What is it?
There is a thing called Exterminatus. It's essentially when you just wipe a planet out altogether, like Death Star style, right?
Yeah.
You can do it in a few different ways. So you can do it with like essentially mass scale atomics. So just atomic bombs, irradiate the planet to hell and just leave it to rot. You can do it with like sheer ballistics and just bomb the planet into nothingness. Or you can do it with this. This is the Death Eater virus.
That sounds disgusting.
It might be the Life Eater virus. It's one of them anyway. Essentially, it's called virus bombing. And what they do is they bomb the planet with this bioagent, which is actually a disease, but it spreads through living material really quickly and essentially just tears it apart. So like your flesh will rot off of your body while you're still alive, kind of thing, if you're exposed to this gas.
So it's like Corona on steroids.
Oh, it's God knows what it is. It's like flesh-eating bacteria to the max on cocaine. Like, it is nuts. So, so he realizes this is what they're loading the cannons with, right? But what they do is they will bomb a planet to hell with this stuff, right? So it eats all the life. But when it does it and it dissolves it down, the decaying biomass produces this gas, which is extremely flammable. So they will bomb the planet with a virus, give it a little bit of time to spread, and then they bomb the planet, igniting all the gas, incinerating the entire globe.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, this is like the worst thing that can happen.
Yeah.
But Saul Tarvitz realizes this is what they're loading their flagship's cannons with. So he realizes they're about to bomb their own planet full of their space marines, full of like half of their legions, with this virus bomb, wiping out all of them. So he's like, right, I need to warn everyone on the ground, but there's no way I can send a message to them, because it'll be blocked or someone will know I did it. So he steals a Thunderhawk. It's a little like spaceship, but it's like a fast one, fighter jet style. Mm-hmm. He steals that and flees towards the planet to warn everyone. Unfortunately, obviously, his ship realizes he just stole a ship and are like, we should probably stop him. So they send a bunch of Thunderhawks to blow him out of the sky. And while trying to evade it, he gets like a Vox call asking what the hell is going on from a random ship. And he realizes the guy that has Voxed him is Nathaniel Garrow, his best fucking friend in the world.
Ah.
Tarvitz rapidly explains what the hell is going on and that he has to warn everyone, and that, this is heresy, this is treachery. Horus has turned against them. And basically he explains it just purely in blind faith, hoping to God Garrow will take his side because of they're brothers, they're best friends. Mm-hmm. And Garrow was like, all right, I got your back. No problem. I'll handle it. And Tarvitz is like, are you sure? And he's like, don't worry, I got it. So he blasts all the pursuing ships out of the sky, but he does it with like large scale bombing, which you wouldn't need to use for that. He does it with like a larger blast than you would have to, so that the blast hides Saul Tarvitz escaping down to the planet. It looks like all of the ships were wiped out in the blast, but he managed to slip out. So he did it to cover him, and he's like, look, they're going to know I did that, but it'll take them a while to realize. So I've bought you time. So Tarvitz manages to get to the planet to warn everyone, and Garrow goes and takes over his fucking ship, because there's another captain that's been left on board who is definitely a traitor, to load their guns with the virus bombs, because Garrow obviously wasn't going to turn evil. They knew that, but they couldn't send him to the planet to die because his leg was gone. So luckily, all his guys on his ship just love him as well, so he just turned everyone against the traitors, and they just took over their ship. So at least they had one ship on the good side. The Eisenstein, it's called. So Tarvitz warns everyone on Istavan, and they manage to either get into bunkers, trenches, or like into catacombs, and they manage to survive the virus bomb. Not everyone, obviously. A lot of people just straight up died and rotted inside their armor, and then were incinerated afterwards. There is actually like a Titan, you know, the big robots. There's one of them that some of the crew of it are traitors and some are not. But because they get told when it's about to happen, because they need that on the ground, and they couldn't justify having that as reinforcement, so they just sent it at the start. But it can just like lock down every port on the ship so that it's like totally isolated, so it's totally safe from the virus bomb. So they do that, but there's a little like internal fight because half the crew is good and half the crew is evil. Which is very funny. They're all just like standing behind consoles shooting at each other like idiots. It's great. It's just such a pointless fight to have. They're in like a 3 foot by 3 foot room shooting at each other. Obviously, a lot of the Space Marines are totally wiped out, and that is a serious issue. But Horus, right before this happened, before he announced the whole thing of firing the virus bombs, was like, I got an idea. I want these remembrancers gone. So he has every remembrancer rounded up and dragged into like the viewing platform, basically. And all the exits are guarded by Space Marines. They are shown the planet getting virus bombed. They are made to see Horus start the rebellion, basically. And then they are all gunned down by the Space Marines that are around the room. They're just totally wiped out like fish in a barrel. But Nathaniel Garrow and his dudes all go to warn the Emperor. Back on Istavan, so Saul got his warning across. Some people survived. The survivors hold up in different places. A lot of the Death Guard got into like bunkers and stuff, so they end up holding up in their bunkers because they love trenches and just fighting. Because Horus, after that, realizing they're still alive, just sends his quote-unquote reinforcements, the traitors, to go wipe them out. And everyone on the planet, all the remaining loyalists, just decide they're going to hold out as long as possible, buy as much time as possible to allow reinforcements to turn up to save them, or at least to waste Horus's time. That's the whole point. They're like, look, we're not winning this one unless someone turns up. So we need to get as much time out of this as possible. But worst case scenario, we're wasting his time. And that's better than nothing. So they just hold up in different locations in like main fortresses and stuff that the Estavanians used when they assaulted. And just keep fighting a war of attrition against the traitors on Istavan. That's actually where the quote that came from the start, that I said at the start, is from. So, for the record, Horus was advised by the Emperor to change the name of his legion from the Luna Wolves to the Sons of Horus, to show that, you know, he's like, it's the difference between him being a Primarch and him being the War Master. And he didn't like it because he didn't want to be seen as different. But after the whole thing of him going through his big fever dream, he actually did change the name to the Sons of Horus. There is a quote, I believe it is Gaviel Loken talking to his men, which is, Astartes, you all know what has happened, and I share your pain and outrage. But I need you to focus on what we must now do. Bonds of brotherhood have been shattered, and we are no longer the Sons of Horus. That name has no meaning for us now. We are once again the Luna Wolves, soldiers of the Emperor. Because it's like his rallying thing to get all his guys to be like, look, we're not going to win this one, but we're going to fuck them up too. Yeah. So it just becomes this like weeks long war of attrition, fighting off the traitors for as long as they can. Amongst it, Lucian, the swordsman from the World Eaters, Emperor's Children, turns against the loyalists and joins the traitors and helps them kill Saul Tarvitz because he's an asshole and only cares about himself. Loken and Torgadan sneak off to fight Abaddon and Aximand, like one-on-one, basically. Torgadan is murdered violently, I believe, by Aximand, and Abaddon is fighting Loken when the DS Irae, which is a Titan, the one that was on the planet, stands on the building they're in, crushing them under rubble. Luckily, Abaddon was wearing Terminator armor, the big tank armor, and was able to just like climb out from under the rubble. And he assumed Loken was dead. He wasn't, for the record. But he assumed he was, and they just kind of left. At this point, where we stand, Horus has decided he's overthrowing the Emperor and has essentially fallen to chaos. He has effectively purged all loyalists from all 4 of the legions he has on his side. And there's a bunch of other plans that he has set in motion. But where it stands, he has 3 Primarchs on his side out of the 18 that exist, and is planning to siege Terra and fight the Emperor to take him out and put himself in charge.
Good luck.
Yeah, exactly. Good luck. But there is one more stage in his plan first, which is Istvan 5. So, I said there's 3 major sections to this. There is the Istvan 3 genocide, there is Istvan 5, and then there is the Siege of Terra. That is as far as the first 3 books go, for the record. They are all about Horus's descent into chaos and descent into treachery in his planning, and then the culling of the legions. And then after that, you get all the stories about all the other Primarchs, because all the other Primarchs are still around doing stuff. But that's what we're going to talk about in the next episode. We're going to give you what happened with Magnus after his attempt to save Horus went wrong. Where's Sanguinius? Where's he been? All this kind of stuff. What's Lehman Russ and the Space Wolves doing at this point? We're going to cover all these things tomorrow, because they all have their own little parts to play in this whole thing. So we're going to cover that tomorrow, and then we'll also cover Istvan 5. What do you think, though? Horus is an evil asshole now, isn't he?
I mean, he had a rough start. Let's say it like that. It could take a toll on everybody, I guess.
Yeah, Horus felt really bad, actually, because he thought that he had made a lot of mistakes, and he was so desperate not to make another one that he started making stupid decisions. So the first mistake they made, I believe it's the first planet they went to, they made a mistake, because they didn't handle 6319 properly and had to genocide a bunch of humans, which obviously is not what they're supposed to do. So, his first act as War Master was a massive mistake, and it just kind of kept going that way. Bad things kept happening, no matter what he did. So he was just so desperate not to make any more mistakes that he started making stupid decisions for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, that's typically how it goes,
Yeah. There's also the whole thing of he actually was shown the possibility of the Emperor becoming revered as a god, and he was like, well, I'm not having that happen. I have to get that guy out of there before he starts becoming a god.
Yeah, can't have that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we can't have that shit going on. This is a very long episode, I believe, compared to the usual. How long are we recording? Oh god, yeah, this is significantly longer than usual. Jesus Christ. I can tell you the proper name now as well. This whole thing is called the Horus Heresy.
The Horus Heresy.
Yeah, that's what this big section is officially called. It's 80 books in total.
Got a good name to it,
It's a good name, yeah. But I think that's us for today. Would you like to round us out?
I mean, I can. Thank you guys for listening. Check out our social medias on Iterators of the Imperium, and see you in the next one.
Bye, guys.